another episode of Off the Leash. I'm Ashley Holder. That's Leah Doherty and Mark Schwab. He is back in the building, and Fred Greetham is joining us via the jungle. Hey, Fred. Thanks for joining us. Big news coming out of Berea today. The Browns finally have their guy, and that guy is former Baltimore Ravens OC Todd Monken. This is going to be his first NFL head coaching job. I don't know if this was exactly the guy that a lot of people thought that they were going to go for, but no previous head coaching job experience in the NFL, but he has been a head coach in college. He was the head coach at Southern Miss. He was also the Browns' former OC back in 2019. He's been the Ravens OC for a couple of years, as well as Georgia out there for 2 years, and the Bucs OC as well for a couple of years. So, guys, what's our first initial thought about this hiring? We'll start with you, Mark.
I mean, my first thought was like everyone else, wow, because we all figured Monken was third in this running, and clearly he was not. I have about the same reaction to him as I do the same as I would for Schwartz or Shieldhouse, who was like, okay, fine. Like I don't love it. I don't hate it. A lot of people seem to hate it. I don't think you can hate it. I think the only thing to hate about the hire is you seem to have also lost Jim Schwartz in the process. I know we're going to cover that ground. But as far as Monken on his own merits, he's fine. He's been around the league. You ran through the resume. He's been through a ton of offenses. The game day operation and calling plays and setting up the script, none of this is going to be hard for him. I don't believe there will be any learning on the job, even though he's never been a head coach before. I'm fine with all of that. I'm not like, woo, excited, let's go. But I'm not going to say, it's a terrible hire because we don't know we don't know what he is. I think he could be a good thing here. They need to get him players, right? We all know that. They got to get him some players.
I think that's the thing. We were never going to be woohoo about any of these final three candidates. Like, if it was Jim Schwartz, we would have been like, okay, that makes sense. That's the safe option. Like, nothing was going to have us, which goes back to your true false, which I guess I was wrong in hindsight about. But, like, nothing was really going to rally the troops and get a lot of people excited. I think it's too early. I've seen so many people online or people messaging me and being like, I hate this hire. It's a terrible hire. You don't know yet. So, like, let's take a second. He was really able to elevate Lamar Jackson's game when they first got together. I know there have been some reports that the relationship ended up breaking down and whatever, who knows what happened there, but he was able to elevate him to MVP status. What we had talked about yesterday, Mark, when you weren't here, is that you need someone that can come in and build a staff. And I don't know how much control the Haslams have over that or not in terms of like, here's who you need to have on your staff. But the difference between Monken and Shieldhouse is he's well connected. He's been in this league for a long time to where he isn't going in, okay, I haven't led anyone before. He hadn't even been an OC before. So to be able to have those connections being in the league for so long, even though he hasn't been a head coach, he's very well connected. He's going to know exactly what he wants. The other thing, too, I've seen reports from people is like, he's a hard-nosed guy that is going to get these guys in line. And I think that's something that you need that maybe you wouldn't get with Shieldhouse. You definitely were going to get it with Schwartz. That's something we liked about him. But from what I've seen about Monken, he's a guy that's going to whip these guys into shape. And Shador seemed excited on Instagram about it. What do you say? Like, let's get to work?
Yeah, he said time for work with the watch. Yeah. So
there we go.
You're already moving Monken from one Pro Bowl quarterback to another Pro Bowl quarterback, baby. I couldn't wait to say it. Fred, let's bring you in now. What's your thoughts on Monken?
Well, I covered a lot of it yesterday. We did talk about that. I had heard that he was still in the mix. And this is nothing against him. When he was here, he did a pretty good job. I mean, Nick Chubb was second in the NFL in rushing, and Baker Mayfield had his best year when he was here. And the offense as a whole was good. Odell Beckham actually had the best year at the end of his career, over 1,000 yards. But I just feel like you wanted to go offense, and that's for sure what you need to work on. But it just seems like unless they were just not convinced Jim Schwartz could get a 60-year-old veteran offensive coordinator that could do the same thing, I don't know why you would almost put yourself by shooting yourself in the foot. Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit were all very vocal. They wanted Schwartz to be the head coach. I know they can change everything with their mind, but I think you're going from like the best top 3 or 4 defense the last 3 years to assuming just because you got players, you're going to automatically stay the same on the defense. And I just think it's a risk. But like I said, Monken, I think, is a good hire. I would have did it the other way around. You have to believe they talked to Schwartz ahead of time. I cannot believe that isn't what they were doing all day yesterday and say, we're going to go with somebody else. Are you okay with that? Because the reactions I've seen since the announcement that it totally was out of the other field, back channels, I went out of here and so forth. So now, if you just think throwing money at somebody, you're going to retain him, I don't know. Maybe he won't get the other opportunities, but I think it's a big risk.
Yeah, and that risk seems like it's probably not going to pay off towards Jim Schwartz. And Tom Pelissero had already put out basically that Schwartz was not happy about the decision of them going with Monken, and he was visibly upset. He was already telling coaches around, Berea that I'm not coming back. And I mean, can you fault him? Essentially, you're telling him, like, I'm not against the Monken hire, but I'm also like, you're basically telling Schwartz that this is your ceiling. This is where you are. This is where we see you. And so I don't fault him for wanting to get out. And a lot of people would want him as DC somewhere else and maybe possibly head coach as well. But I mean, I think for what he's done with this defense and how he is respected and how hard-nosed, he's been, I think he is worth a chance as well. Do you not think he can take over the offense as well?
I think if you hired Schwartz, obviously at that point, your entire next thing is who is the offensive coordinator, because then that person has this huge reclamation project on their hands. I've got to think that I am surprised, and Fred touched on it. I'm surprised at how reactionary we've heard Schwartz has been, because that means they did a terrible job of flushing this out, either getting a feeler on how he would be if he didn't get the job, or just doing a terrible job of prepping him for this. They screwed up probably both of those areas. They must have felt like we don't see somebody out there that we feel can really kind of, whip this into shape, so to speak, if we just hire him as an offensive coordinator, other than maybe Todd Monken or, the candidates for realistic people they could actually get here.
Yeah, and you bring a really
good point. And they think they can get a defensive coordinator because they can sell the position with Miles.
Because I don't think they thought they would have got Monken as an OC, because he was already on his way to the Giants with Harbaugh.
Yeah, they needed to do something there to get him, right? You're not going to say, if all things are equal, he's not coming here. If all things are equal and it's assistant head coach and here's a little, you're probably not getting him. You need that. I do think, and we as a collective media corps, not everyone in this room, probably should have taken Monken a bit more seriously as a candidate. Was he not the first guy they talked to? If he wasn't the first, he might have been the second. He was a guy they identified very early in this process of somebody we need to talk to. And we saw they interviewed him, and we were kind of like, he's a guy. Okay, I get it. But he was very early in their process. And that maybe should have been more of a red flag to a lot of us in the media corps and just in the whole Browns zeitgeist as, we talk about this team and cover it. They identified him early.
Well, and I think the fact that it took this long, too, we could look now in hindsight and say then maybe they weren't going to go with Schwartz this whole entire time, because we had felt like maybe this process was taking so long because they were doing their due diligence and maybe looking into guys that could come in and be good coordinators and could help fill out his staff. But maybe, and I'm sure that's what they're going to say. We talked about this yesterday. They're probably going to say Monken's who we wanted from the get-go, right? But I guarantee you Jim Schwartz didn't have that same feeling. And so it goes back to the point that they clearly did not handle this correctly. And I'm sure Jim Schwartz felt like it was his job to lose, and they had not been transparent enough about maybe how serious they were about some other candidates. It is how I feel, to be that angry. And if those reports are true, to have that kind of reaction where you're like, I'm out.
I've also seen some stuff, though, that the Haslams wanted Schwartz, and then Andrew Berry was kind of more like Shieldhouse and kind of like Todd as well.
But the whole point with this taking so long was like, we all have to make sure we're on the same page. That's why we're having him fill out the questionnaires, the thing.
Right, which I don't believe that they were having people do. But I will say this is like, I also feel that they don't have much more time to waste when it comes to trying to develop the offense, right? You look at the draft class last year and you look at what Monken's been able to do with young players. You have a great group just last year alone that, he could do a lot with Shador if that's going to be his guy, which I've heard that he was a fan of Shador last year when he was coming out of the draft. Obviously, he probably didn't have a lot of say when it came to the Ravens, but, I think his offensive style fits Shador more, going downfield and also being a dual threat, running as well with the ball. And then Quinshawn, we saw that Lamar, Derrick Henry, punch or whatever. So I do feel like, I don't think it's a bad move. I just hate that it comes at the expense of Jim.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I don't hate the move. I just don't like what it does to Jim, Fred.
I'm a little surprised at how fans are, and Fred, jump here in a second. I'm a little surprised at how the fans have instantly seized on this as a terrible hire. Like,
because it's a toxic fan base.
it's just,
If they would have went with Shieldhouse, they wouldn't have known anything about him either.
that's it.
So, like,
I don't know who gets him excited.
He has a good resume, but he's like Schwartz. He's been at the ceiling where, for whatever reason, he's always been perceived as no higher than an offensive coordinator. He's done well everywhere. I know the offenses where, 15 points and 16 points a game, 32nd and 31st the last 2 years. You need to put all your attention on the offense. So they just evidently felt that it was worth the risk to lose Jim Schwartz, because I looked at the quotes. The day they fired Stefanski, Jimmy Haslam said, absolutely, they want to keep him. He's a great coach, talking about Schwartz. And so if all along they assumed he was going to be the defensive coordinator, they really misread the room, when it comes to making a decision there. And so that's all I'm saying is why the best unit you had, Mike Tomlin said the best unit in the AFC North, offense or defense on any of the teams, was the Browns defense. So he did a great job. I just think everybody's short selling that you just say, hey, you be the coach. This defense will be great. Not necessarily, not too many run the Jim Schwartz defense. Maybe they'll be able to convince one of his, underlings like Tarver or Banda to be the defensive coordinator and keep the same system. But they were going to have to get a new defensive coordinator anyway, but you're assuming that Schwartz would still call the plays and do all that.
yeah, and I also think that, he still has a year left on his contract. So at this point, they could also do a thing where they don't let him walk and not give, him the grace like how Callahan was able to do and go be with his son.
I don't feel like that's a smart move, only because I think it was Tomlin. We're quoting Tomlin now twice. Said he's always looking for volunteers, not hostages.
Right.
Like if you have a guy that just straight does not want to be there, and apparently Schwartz had been telling people, for the last week or two, if I don't get this, I'm out of here. It's the only reason I'm staying. He's only 1 year anyway. Just figure it out and move on. But I should point out, we've lost Leah. She has to go do TV.
Yeah.
Wondering why suddenly we're down a member of the team.
Okay. Well,
We just kicked her off.
think about
She don't go do the TV.
You remember Kyle Shanahan was under contract and he wrote a 32-point PowerPoint to get out of his contract when he was under Mike Pettin, and they had drafted Johnny Manziel. And that was actually drawn up by Mike McDaniel, who was also on the staff, and the Browns let him out of there. PR-wise, already Schwartz has thrown a big enough fit, that if you say, nope, you can't leave, that's just going to send repercussions around the NFL. Again, a black eye on the Browns. So, I just think it's an unforced error once again.
So do we think in this standpoint, his birthday's next week, he'll be 60 next week. He's got about, decades of experience, When you look at it, do you think that this is a long-term option for the Browns, or is this just more so a, okay, we're going to get him in here a year or two. Let's see how he does. And if it works out, then it works out. You guys know that better because you guys have been through this a lot longer.
It depends entirely on if they win. You could say Kevin Stefanski was here a long time. He was 6 years. If Todd Monken coaches till he's 66, that's not outrageous. Guys have coached that long. It's all about whether they win. And so I don't know. It depends on how good of a quarterback is he going to have, right? I think if you get the guy a quarterback in some pieces, I think they'll be all right. What are they going to do? Who are they going to? We've talked about that. That'll be the talking point for the next few months. Quarterback. How do they fix the offense? But yeah, I think if he wins, he'll be here a little while.
That's the whole point, and, as Mark says, I can see a path or a way that I thought actually yesterday, I think I said it on the episode, that if they hired Shieldhouse, it was almost like, not they're throwing the season away, but let him learn on the job. They'll get the #1 pick next year. You can get your quarterback, and then you got a young up and coming offensive mind. But now it almost seems like they're trying to win now. I mean, you don't hire Todd Monken and say, okay, we're going to tank, but because of what you've done possibly with the defensive side of the ball, you really could be tanking. And a year from now, we're talking about who they're going to draft at the quarterback. Or then again, he might have sold them that Shedeur Sanders is my guy, and I'm going to make him into a real Pro Bowl quarterback. Or maybe they told him, heaven forbid, Deshaun Watson, I can work with him. I don't know. I don't know the dynamics here, and I don't know if we'll ever know, but it just is, it still leaves me scratching my head, because it's like, if you're going this route and going to kind of tick off the defense, why not just hire the young up-and-coming 35-year-old and go from there?
And that's what I mean. It's just like, you're not going to be able to bring him in and then, say we're, or anyone else. And I feel like there was no option for them, I almost feel like, to tank, right? Because at some point you've already lost, you've already had 2 straight losing seasons. You got to do something with it. So it's like, that can't, for them, I feel like it's like, that can't be an option.
If you tank, why did you sign Miles? Why didn't you trade him? Everything they've done with the defensive side of the ball, starting with Miles.
I just feel like they didn't want anyone else to have Miles. I don't even know.
Well, then you're not rebuilding. If you're going to rebuild, you trade him, you trade Ward, you trade all those pieces, you trade Bitonio for a 4th-round pick, whatever the heck it is. If you are going to once they did not do those things, the only other option is find a way to win. So no, I don't think they can. And you're right, you've already wasted 2. If you weren't rebuilding the last 2 seasons when you've lost, when you've won 3 and then 5 games, what are you doing now? Like, you can't start now and say, okay, now we're going to win 3 games a year for the next 2 years on top of the ones we just tanked. You know? No, once they set the course in motion with Miles and not trading guys, they have to find a way to win. That's why Stefanski got fired. They didn't win.
Right. Well, do you guys both feel, or, not feel that, Shedeur was any of the topic of conversation when they met with Monken? Because, I mean, I'm just like, what is the real option of them really going out and getting a quarterback rather than just using Shedeur and we'll say / Deshaun? You know what I mean? Because I also feel like I could see them really being like, let's give this guy a full offseason, which he's talked all year about, like, give me a full offseason and whatnot, and then put him in that driver's seat and say, can this guy, get him the pieces to say, can he lead this offense? Yeah, I'd be that guy.
I mean, obviously they had extensive conversations about the entire team, and of course, quarterback was part of it. I'm sure he likes Shedeur to a degree. You did mention that, and that was right. The Ravens wanted to draft him last year. All right, but I think they'll talk about guys like Geno Smith, or does Kyler Murray become available, or some of these other options, the universe of quarterbacks, they will talk about it. I would not be surprised at all if the starting quarterback next year is not on this roster. I also wouldn't be surprised if he was. I guess I'm kind of unfazed on either way. But I guess the only thing that would surprise me is that if Deshaun Watson is completely healthy, I would be surprised if Shedeur beat him out. That would surprise me.
I guess we can't forget that also Dylan is on the roster as well.
I don't expect him to beat anybody out.
Fred, what's your thoughts?
It kind of threw out the window. I wrote stories on all 3 of the prospects, so I'd be ready to go. But I wrote the least about Monken, just because I really just didn't see it happening that way. I just could not believe. I looked at it as a golf analogy. It was a tap in or a 6-inch putt. That's all they had to do was make the right move here. And I feel like, again, nothing against Monken, that they just did not make the right move. And so they could be in the same situation a year from now. What happens if they go 2-15? They fire Barry and Monken and start all over again. I don't know. It's just really perplexing. But he's going to be tasked totally with getting this offense fixed, because they risk the one part of the team that was solid. I think, a lot of people think, oh, they got the good players. Well, I don't know. Why do you even have a coach? I think it makes a difference. Mike Vrabel took a team. Yeah, he got a quarterback, but he took a team to the Super Bowl that was a 4-win team last year. So maybe Monken can immediately turn this around, but they better be all on the same page and be able to get the right pieces in here to not only coach, but draft and off season. And the quarterback is murky at best.
I mean, my thing though with the players too, just to lastly say this is like, I can understand them being mad. I can understand them wanting Jim Schwartz, but they also know it's a business at the end of the day. So yeah, figure it out. What are you gonna do? Stomp your feet and not play?
Right.
You don't really have that option. You can be upset, but Miles can be furious that it's not Jim. But it kind of is what it is. You need to go out there and try and make 24 sacks next year now.
Here's your $40 million. Go play.
You already took it, right? If you were worried about that, then I mean, you wouldn't. I would say you not have signed it because there was no. At that point, whatever plan they sold you on, which I still don't believe.
I don't either.
I still don't know what the plan that they sold them on.
This is what we're going to try to get better. Here's $40 million. That's the plan. We're going to try to get better. Here's $40 million a year.
And they said no problem.
Okay.
We can do that.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, listen, there's probably going to be a lot more coming out. We know that for sure that we're going to probably hear something from Monken. I'm assuming that press conference should probably be early next week. I know some people were thinking could even possibly be this week, but I figured they give him a couple days, let him get in here. And then, introduce him to the media and we'll kind of get to hear from him and what he's thinking of, where he wants to take this offense. The quarterback, which, again, Andrew Berry has said a million times, that is their number one priority, and they have to have that figured out. So we'll be excited to hear what he has to say, and maybe if any players have came out and, decided to speak on it outside of Shador's time for work post.
TikTok.
Let's go. He basically, I think he feels good that Monken is on his side. That's just what I'm thinking. Especially
doesn't hurt.
Especially because of where they were going, where the Ravens were going last year. But all right, thanks guys so much for joining us today. Mark, you got a lot of hits going on. He's going to be on TV.
You probably lost Leah. Leah's got to go to
Leah's
TV.
on TV right now.
You got to do TV.
It is a busy day. Make sure you guys tune in to
the
19 News. Yeah, we're going to be doing all that. Yeah, Fred, you got to get out the woods. Well, you're having a good time. There's no snow on the woods, so you're probably nice and comfy wherever you're out
today.
Well, make sure you check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and make sure you stream on the 19 News Plus app as well. For myself and Mark Schwab and OBR's Fred Greetham and Leah Doherty, who is also with us but not physically with us. This is Off the Leash. We will see you next Tuesday. Thanks, Fred.
All right.